The co-byline piece on ESPN and ESPN.com certainly caught my eye about the University of Michigan and the man who wrote it, along with Pete Thamel, here on the Rich Eisen Show. Dan Murphy, staff writer of ESPN. Good to see you, Dan. How are you?
Good, Rich. How are you?
I am well, sir. So I have lots of questions. I'll give you the floor. What is the document you and Pete Thamel got and wrote about?
So what we got over the weekend here was a draft of the notice of allegations, which, to make the legal analogy, it's kind of like seeing the indictment that they're about to turn over to say what the charges are. So this could change before they actually finalize what they're going to attempt to sanction Michigan with. And they still need to sort of have a bit of probably likely a negotiation to figure out what the punishments are going to be. But we did get several new details about what the NCAA has found and what they're aiming to ding Michigan with here moving forward.
Okay, so what did you glean from this document, Dan?
So a couple things. One is that Connor, they had a lot of details on what Connor Stalions was doing from 2021 to 2023 in order to steal, grab signals of other people's sidelines and what his operation looked like. They did not find any Michigan coaches who knew about this or that they could prove that knew about this. And there were a handful of 7 people total from the 2023 program who are subject to potential violations here. And most of the coaching staff that lands on that list is due to interfering or trying to get in the way of the NCAA's investigation. A failure to cooperate is the main charge. And to me, the one that stands out the most, and I think the only guy that's still left on Michigan staff moving forward, is head coach Sherrone Moore, who could be potentially facing some sanctions for his involvement in deleting some text messages that he got from Connor Stalions on the same day when all this news was first breaking last October.
But those text messages, based on the reporting I saw, were retrieved and eventually handed over by Sherrone Moore?
That's right. Yeah. So the NCAA has seen 50-some text messages after they did some searching of his phone. They were able to get them back. And, you can look into that in a couple of different ways. The fact that the NCAA has seen these text messages and isn't charging him or isn't attempting to accuse him of any violation other than having deleted the text messages might lead you to believe that there probably wasn't anything too spicy or too damning in the actual messages once the NCAA got a chance to look at them.
So, okay, so what is in this document that actually puts out there what Connor Stalions did and how it did get to Michigan's sideline, Dan? Is there any – because that, to be honest with you, I'm trying to find actual concrete videos, emails, an actual through line from what Connor Stalions gleaned, what he got. Is there any information on what he got in this document, Dan?
They do say that they reviewed films, photographs. They had sort of a Google Drive folder full of information that Stalions was gathering that showed sort of how he coordinated with all of these other folks that he was sending out to different stadiums and having them tape another team's sidelines. They found video of that. They found sheets of the signals that he was using. There's some notes in there about having evidence that when this was all kind of hitting the fan last October, that he sent a couple of these sheets to another intern's house to try to get them out of the building, that he took a hard drive that was in Michigan football's offices and removed that from the building and then has not turned that over to the NCAA or Michigan since then. So they were able to figure out, using tracking some of the tickets he purchased through different aliases and some of the stuff he had in that Google Drive, that he had scouted, I think it was 58 different off-campus scouting trips, which are against NCAA rules, over the course of 3 years, and several different teams, dozens of teams or so. Some of them as many as 5, 6, 7 times a year. He would go and send somebody to another team's game, one particular opponent's game, in order to try to crack their signals. That's the meat of what they've found with Stalions. A lot of it was sort of what he's taken away, and they were able to pin it down with ticket purchases and different photos and film.
So where are the photos and the films? Where are those?
Still under NCAA protection. So this is a draft of what would essentially be like a charging document, right? So this was pretty high level in terms of what they found. The actual evidence is not something that anyone has seen, outside of the NCAA investigators themselves at this point.
Dan Murphy here on the Rich Eisen Show. All right, let me ask you this, because I'm not trying to out your sources, Dan. I really am not. How's that for walking in the front door here? But in Indianapolis right now in the NCAA? Are people trying to find out how you and Pete got this thing? Do you think?
I'm sure some people are. Yeah, I think it's just one of those things. I don't want to get too far into how we source
Of
it, but
course.
yeah, I think they're building their case slowly, and I think we'll have more concrete versions of this notice of allegations that are coming pretty soon. I would imagine before the season gets started.
Do you think there are some people that are using you and Pete to build a case in front of people, who are getting ready for a college football season right now and have potentially turned the page on 2023, Dan?
I don't think so. I don't know that what we're going to publish is going to change what they're doing very much. And I don't really want to get too far into sourcing on that side.
I understand that. And that's why I think you're kind of, maybe picking up my drift here of this conversation is that once this was ripped out root and branch, is there anything in this document about what was going on or anything going on after Connor Stalions left and had everything ripped out root and branch and Harbaugh was serving a suspension? Anything from the point of, the Michigan State destruction on, Dan, from last year?
So the accusations against coaches and everyone other than Stalions in this is mostly about whether or not they cooperated with the NCAA's efforts to learn more about this. So it's not more about whether or not they were taking other signals and stealing them. And yeah, once Stalions left mid-October, there's no accusations that there was any other type of rule violations in terms of sportsmanship violations at that point. There are some other items in there that aren't related to Stalions in terms of some more nitpicky recruiting type of things that some of the coaches got involved in. Buying guys meals, bringing guys on campus for workouts when they shouldn't have, sort of contacting guys when they were too young. I think the most sort of serious allegation was against a coach named Chris Partridge, who's no longer with the program, who was accused of sort of pressuring players to lie to or mislead NCAA investigators about the Stalions case to make sure that they protected the coaching staff.
Interesting. And so in terms of Stalions on the sideline and a getup, like that's also in this document.
Yeah,
Dan?
the NCAA did confirm that they were able to determine that it was Connor Stalions who was on Central Michigan's sideline. Central Michigan played Michigan State in the first weekend of the season last year. Stalions was there wearing Central Michigan gear and had a bench pass from the Central Michigan athletic department. They didn't say how he got that pass or if they know how he got that pass, but they did confirm that it was him on that sideline. He was there along with someone else who was in the stands videotaping Michigan State sideline during that game.
That's just so absurd. Positively absurd. So where do things stand right now, Dan?
So, yeah, we're still waiting for the final version of the notice of allegations.
Which could be different than what you got a copy of.
Correct. Yeah, there could be. I wouldn't expect it would change materially, but it could be tweaked.
How about this? Let me ask you this question. What, in your experience, potentially could cause this to be made different by the time it's official? Dan?
I don't know that there will be any really significant changes.
Okay.
There might be tweaking language or people going back and forth about exactly what they want to say in there. But
okay.
After that, I think there will be some sort of negotiation between Michigan and the NCAA to try to arrive at a set of penalties that everybody can agree on.
Okay. And where is Connor Stalions now, Dan? Where is he?
I think he's waiting for his Netflix debut. Other than that, I don't know what he's up to.
That's happening in November?
I think even sooner than that. I think late August is when the show's supposed to be on.
What are you hearing about that show? I mean, like, are the NCAA investigators going to be, zipping past Ripley to get to this documentary and just with their pens out and their papers? Like, Dan, is that?
I don't know. It's in a series of documentaries that the main subjects have had a bit of control over what's going to be said in them. So we'll see what Stalions says. I'm sure people watch. I don't believe that Stalions has cooperated with the NCAA at all at this point, from what we know. It remains to be seen what he may say or how he might frame things, but it looks like he'll be a part of that, I think, in late August.
And if I'm not mistaken, in the beginning of this conversation, you said that this document, Dan, is going to be the basis of a negotiation with Michigan in terms of penalties. I mean, What did you mean by that? That this will just be pled out as opposed to be fought against by Michigan, Dan?
I don't know for sure. I just know typically after the NCAA provides a notice of allegations, and in a lot of these cases, they will go back and forth with the school to try to say, here's what we found. Here's what we think is appropriate. Let's talk it through. And if Michigan wants to push back against any of that, they can. And the NCAA will then, the analogy is kind of like a pretrial conference where you might reach a settlement in a criminal case instead of going to a jury trial. And the NCAA typically goes through that process with schools when they're doing something along these lines. So I don't know for sure that will happen, but that's the next step in the process.
Okay. Do you want to offer an opinion as to what happened? Now, I mean, you're there, facts on the ground. You're seeing this document. You might have one. I don't know if you care to offer one because that strays from the lane potentially. But I'll give you that opportunity to offer what you think happened. Dan.
No, I mean, yeah, as you said, I'm not really in the business of having an opinion on this stuff, but I think it seems that they've gathered enough evidence to show that Connor Stalions was videotaping these teams against the NCAA rules, and so far they haven't shown that any of Michigan's coaches beyond Stalions and a couple interns and one full-time staff member who was unnamed, no one else has been accused of knowing how Stalions was acquiring all these signals.
What about your opinion of the effectiveness of it, Dan? Do you have anything on that front based on what you're seeing or gleaning?
I'm not a football coach. I never played D1 football. I wouldn't venture to say how much that may or may not have helped them.
When does this become official, do you think, this document?
It's a good question. I would imagine before the football season that they'll have official notice of allegations. I don't know whether or not the full process will be concluded before the football season starts.
And there's like level 1, right? Level 2 type of, I guess, violations. If you wouldn't mind explaining to my audience what that means. And I read in your document it's level 2 for Coach Moore right now. And what would that mean, Dan?
Yeah, so that's right. So NCAA has different tiers of what they consider the most serious violations. Level 1 is the most serious and typically lands on people that have shown a sort of blatant disregard for the rules or a repeat offender of rules. Right now, Sherrone Moore, from what we have been able to gather, is accused of a level 2 violation, which is less serious and less likely to result in major penalties. But on his list, I think, is potential for a show clause, show clause or a suspension is what the document tells us.
So you're saying his first season as head coach of Michigan might include a similar sit down of what Harbaugh had? Is that what you're saying? Or
yeah, it's on the table. I don't know that it will actually get there or not, but that's what's on the table.
Dan Murphy, I appreciate the time. Greatly appreciate you laying out some facts and what's going on for my audience.
Thanks,
appreciate it. That's Dan Murphy, ESPN investigative reporter, right here on The Rich Eisen Show. Catch The Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.